In the depths of Stalin's Moscow, a writer sits at his desk, penning words that could destroy him. His manuscript burns in a drawer, then resurrects itself. Death visits his characters, then spares them. Magic bleeds through the grey concrete of Soviet reality like wine through white cloth. Manuscripts don't burn, whispers the devil himself. Mikhail Bulgakov knows the weight of forbidden ink. The year is 1928, and he begins writing what will become his masterpiece, a novel so dangerous that even its author believes it will never see light. The Soviet censors have already marked him. His plays vanish from theatres overnight. In his cramped Moscow apartment, tuberculosis eats at his lungs while fear devours his dreams. Each page he writes is an act of rebellion, each sentence a prayer to gods that communist doctrine insists do not exist. The manuscript grows in darkness, fed by desperation and genius. The devil arrives in Moscow on a Tuesday. He wears a grey suit and carries a walking stick topped with a poodle's head. His retinue includes a giant black cat who walks upright and speaks in riddles. They come not to corrupt, but to expose what is already rotten. Bulgakov understands that evil is not always the monster under the bed. Sometimes it wears a bureaucrat smile, stamps official papers, and speaks in the measured tones of progress. Sometimes it builds walls around truth and calls them necessary. The master, unnamed, broken, confined to an asylum, represents every artist who dares to speak when silence is demanded. He has written a novel about Pontius Pilate, a story that challenges the very foundations of Soviet atheism. His crime is not blasphemy, but imagination. In the sterile corridors of the psychiatric hospital, creativity is diagnosed as madness. The master's manuscript has been rejected, ridiculed, destroyed. Yet somewhere in the city his words continue to live, passed from hand to hand like contraband hope. Margarita flies naked through the Moscow night, her body transformed by love into something beyond mortal flesh. She becomes a witch, not through pacts with darkness, but through the simple act of choosing devotion over safety. Her love transcends both heaven and hell. The supernatural crashes into Soviet reality like a meteor into frozen earth. Citizens who deny magic suddenly find themselves witnesses to miracles. They watch rubles transform into foreign currency, then back to worthless paper. Nothing is as solid as it seems. Bulgakov weaves three narratives into one impossible tapestry. Ancient Jerusalem bleeds into modern Moscow. The Devil's Ball echoes through time to reach Pilate's courtyard. Past and present dance together in a waltz of eternal questions. Pontius Pilate suffers not from guilt, but from the weight of political calculation. He knows Yeshua is innocent, yet signs the death warrant anyway. His torment spans 2,000 years, a reminder that some choices echo through eternity. The procurator's headaches mirror Bulgakov's own physical pain. Disease becomes metaphor. Suffering transforms into art. The author's tuberculosis infects his characters with their own forms of anguish, their own desperate searches for meaning. Moscow's literary establishment becomes a circus of ambition and betrayal. Writers denounce each other for better apartments, bigger royalties, safer positions. The pen becomes a sword, and every word a potential weapon against one's neighbours. Bulgakov himself navigates this treacherous landscape, writing plays that please Stalin one day and enrage him the next. His letters to the Premier are masterpieces of desperate eloquence, pleading for the right to exist, to create, to breathe. The Devil's Retinue performs chaos with scientific precision. They expose greed, vanity, and cowardice not through temptation, but through opportunity. They offer people chances to reveal what they already are. Behemoth, the enormous black cat, embodies the absurdity of existence under totalitarian rule. He drinks vodka, plays chess, and speaks philosophy while perched on his hind legs. Logic becomes farce. The impossible becomes mundane. The Satan's Ball unfolds in impossible splendour, a gathering of history's most notorious figures. Yet even here, among the damned, love finds its place. evil itself bows to the power of Margarita's devotion. Time bends and breaks throughout the novel. Characters slip between centuries like travellers crossing borders. The 24 hours of the Devil's Moscow visit contain eternities of human experience. Bulgakov's own relationship with power mirrors his character's struggles. He writes letters to Stalin, walks the knife's edge between acknowledgement and independence. His survival depends on being useful, but not threatening. The Master's madness is perhaps the sanest response to an insane world. In the asylum, he finds the only place where truth can be spoken without consequences. Insanity becomes a form of freedom. Moscow itself becomes a character. Its streets and buildings witnesses to both ancient evil and modern corruption. The city's architecture holds secrets. Its shadows harbour both devils and angels. Bulgakov's wife, Elena, mirrors Margarita's fierce devotion. She protects his manuscripts, tends his illness, and fights for his legacy. Love becomes the ultimate act of resistance against forces that would erase both man and memory. The novel's composition spans 12 years, each draft a new attempt to capture the impossible. Bulgakov writes in code, in symbols, in the language of dreams. Reality becomes too dangerous for direct confrontation. Yeshua HaNozri speaks with the voice of radical compassion. His words about the fundamental goodness of humanity cut through both Roman cynicism and Soviet ideology. He represents the dangerous idea that love might actually transform the world. The burning of the Master's manuscript becomes a metaphor for the destruction of truth itself. Yet what burns in the physical world survives in the realm of spirit. Art transcends the mortal limitations of paper and ink. Bulgakov's theatre work informs his novel's dramatic structure. Each scene unfolds with theatrical precision. Each character enters and exits with perfect timing. The boundary between performance and reality dissolves. The Devil's final departure from Moscow carries with it all the characters who have been transformed by their encounter with the impossible. They rise into the night sky, leaving behind a city that will never quite be the same. Censorship becomes a character in its own right, an invisible presence that shapes every word. Bulgakov learns to write in the spaces between lines, to hide rebellion in the heart of apparent conformity. The novel's multiple manuscripts tell their own story of resurrection. Burned, rewritten, hidden, discovered. The text itself becomes evidence of the indestructible nature of true art. Bulgakov's death in 1940 transforms him from dangerous author to safe classic. His words, too powerful for his own time, wait patiently for their moment of revelation. The Master's fate becomes the author's prophecy. The book's publication in 1967 proves that truth, like love, cannot be permanently suppressed. Soviet readers recognize their own world in its pages, see their own struggles reflected in its mirrors. Western readers discover in Bulgakov's work a bridge between worlds, a Russian soul speaking in the universal language of human struggle. The novel transcends its Soviet origins to become a global meditation on power, art, and faith. The Devil's ultimate mercy surprises even himself. He grants the Master not glory, but peace. Sometimes the greatest gift is not victory, but the end of fighting. Bulgakov's Moscow apartment becomes a pilgrimage site for readers who understand that some spaces hold more than memory. The walls themselves seem to whisper fragments of forbidden stories. The novel's exploration of creativity under oppression speaks to artists across decades and continents. From Soviet dissidents to Chinese democracy advocates, the Master's struggle becomes universal. Each generation discovers new layers in Bulgakov's masterpiece. What begins as an anti-Soviet allegory evolves into a timeless examination of conscience, courage, and the price of truth. The text's magical realism predates and influences an entire literary movement. Bulgakov shows that the fantastical can illuminate reality more clearly than documentary realism. Modern readers find in the novel a mirror for their own struggles with authority, conformity, and the courage to create. the Master's dilemma echoes in every age that values safety over truth. The devil's final words, "Everything will be as it should be, that is how the world is made," carry both threat and promise. Acceptance and resistance dance together in the eternal human struggle. In the end, Bulgakov's greatest magic trick is not the devil's appearance in Moscow, but the transformation of personal anguish into universal art. His manuscript, like the Master's, refuses to burn. It lives, breathes, and continues to whisper dangerous truths into the darkness of every age that would silence them.